So the damage that can be caused by ice dams is rather extensive. You can have wall damage. Once that water starts to creep up, once that ice kind of comes under the shingle and the water pushes up, it starts to leak into your wall, get into your interior. The damage is, at best, wall damage. We're talking your plaster, your drywall, your insulation. Everything essentially needs to be replaced once that water gets in. Aside from that, you have damage on the gutters. The gutters are the most obvious thing. You can see that from the ground. You can see the gutters hanging. I've seen ice dams rip off gutters. I've also seen ice dams turn over and actually damage siding. So, what seems like, a short event of snow and, just normal weather can actually cause major damage to your house. What I think is the best option, which is steaming. They make some pretty high-powered, high-temp steamers nowadays that are specifically designed for ice dams. We have one called the Arctic Steamer. They sell for, I want to say, around $5,000 or $6,000. But if you're out there removing ice dams, it is a no-brainer to have a steamer. So here it is, right here. This is one of the guys with a steamer.
And why is that so much better than water? Sure.
The reason is it is technically water, right? But the reason it's better than power washing is that you're sending less pressure out of the steamer. The steamer is going to cut the ice. It's not going to hurt the shingle. It's not going to hurt the clay. It's only going to cut the ice, whereas the power washer will do significant damage.
Will beat the hell out of the shingles.
It will beat up your roof pretty good. But the steamer, completely, it is delicate with everything but the ice. So that's why that's the preferred method. At Knutson Partners Construction, we take care of ice dams. If you have an ice dam and you're in the Twin Cities, please call us at 612-222-5112 for basic or emergency services. Hello, everybody. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about ice dams. They are coming. It's winter time. Snow is falling, and it's freezing cold. So I thought this is no better time to talk about how ice dams are formed, but also how to get rid of them safely. And as a guest, I have Ruben Saltzman, who is the owner of Structure Tech. Structure Tech is a company that does home inspections in the Twin Cities. He also is on a podcast, or has a podcast, called Structure Talk. And fantastic podcast. I highly recommend it. And here he is. This is Ruben Saltzman. Ruben, thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Sure, appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. I was telling you earlier, so I discovered you, if you will. I found out about you by skimming through YouTube and trying to do YouTube research on ice dams. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff out there. There's a ton of information on what causes them, how to get rid of them, safely, how to do them safely, everything. But your video really stood out to me because you have, I think, a 30-minute video, and I wish I knew the title of it. Maybe, Gabe, we can scroll it down here and post.
Okay, yeah, in post is possible.
Sure. But it explains what causes them. And I've been in construction almost, my whole life. I grew up with a tool belt on a ladder. I've done everything from knocking them off with a hammer with my dad, to doing the actual steaming. But I've always been under the impression, from everything I've seen, that ventilation is a massive, massive portion of ice dams. Ventilation in the attic, that is. And according to your video, it's a portion, but much smaller than people might assume. So I guess, if you don't mind, just kind of take it away. Give us your rundown on what causes an ice dam from your experience in the industry.
Sure. Just to start from the beginning, what causes the ice dam is you've got snow on the roof melting, and then it reaches the edge and it gets cold again and it freezes. That's what causes the literal dam. So then the big question is, what causes the snow to melt? Well, it's heat. How does heat get there? The number one cause of that, and there's a bunch of them, but the number one cause is by conditioned household air leaking up into the attic space. And it does this through passageways between the breathing air, the air that we all live in, the conditioned space, and the unconditioned space, the attic. And these passageways are going to be areas like around plumbing vents, around electrical boxes, where you've got wall intersections, where you've got big pipes coming up into the attic, say for your furnace vent. All of these areas are going to have passageways for warm air to leak up into the attic. And, I'd say that's probably 80 to 90% of the reasons that people have ice dams is from these air leaks, which are also called attic bypasses. That's the vast majority of it. Now, if you don't have enough insulation, that will certainly cause ice dams. You can have a bunch of heat just naturally getting up into the attic. And sometimes you'll have some one-off things, like maybe you would have a bunch of recessed lights with 100-watt bulbs, and you don't have sufficient insulation over them, or these recessed lights are really close to the roof surface, and those will transmit a bunch of heat to the roof decking. You could have all that stuff going on too, but I mean, most of it is going to be just plain old air leaking up into the attic. And if you have all of this stuff going on, if you have a bunch of air leaking up and you don't have enough insulation, sometimes people will try to add ventilation to kind of make up for all these other wrongs. The ventilation is always something that is more treated than the symptoms. Lack of ventilation will never cause an ice dam, as long as you have everything else taken care of.
Right.
So that's why we say ventilation is the last thing you want to look at.
Sure. In other words, if you do everything properly, you seal everything, you insulate everything properly, the ventilation, although it helps some, it's not as necessary or as important as those first two or three things.
Yeah, you got it.
So as someone who inspects homes, and tell me, so when you inspect a home, typically you're talking about someone buys a house, they call you, or they put an offer in, they call you guys.
Yep.
You guys go out and inspect the house and then give that potential buyer a report. Is that your primary business at Structure Tech?
That's our bread and butter. That's probably 95% of what we do is real estate transactions.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. And then what would be something when you're doing these inspections, what would be something that is really alarming in the attic?
I'll tell you, if we're inspecting a house that's, well, it could be any age, but I mean, if it's built before the 90s, it's pretty much a guarantee that you're going to have these attic bypasses. So I wouldn't say it's alarming. I'd say what I would be alarmed at is if I get a home inspector on my team who goes up in the attic and they say, I can't find any attic air leaks.
Sure.
I'd say, which house are you at?
Right.
Because they're going to be in every older house, unless you've already hired a contractor to come out, pull the insulation out of there, seal off all the bypasses, and put all the insulation back in. I mean, it's standard. You're going to have this on every house. So I wouldn't call it alarming, but something that does freak people out. And I'm not saying this is the end of the world, but I know from experience it freaks out home buyers is when you got an attic that's covered in mold. And we're talking a bunch of black stuff all over the place and maybe a bunch of frost in the attic. The mold will grow there because you end up with a lot of frost. And frost accumulates in the attic for the exact same reason. It's because you have warm, conditioned, humid air leaking up into the attic space during the wintertime. And then it hits that roof decking and it condenses, it turns into frost. And then eventually it accumulates and it keeps building up with frost as we have long cold snaps. And then it warms up and then it all melts. And then all your roof decking gets saturated and, under really bad conditions, you may even have water dripping down and staining your ceiling. And then, of course, I'm sure you've had those complaints being a roofer. You end up having your clients call you and say, hey, my roof is leaking.
Absolutely.
No, your roof is not leaking. It's a building science condition.
Right.
But you know,
It's
it's got to be tough for you trying to convince your clients of that.
I mean, that's great insight, because it really is. It sounds like I'm presenting them with a magic trick, right? Like, because you're saying no, it's not the roof that we just put on. It's condensation from your home, and it does tend to seem sort of unbelievable. That's a huge hurdle when someone calls us and says that they have some type of moisture issue, whether it's on the bottom of a roof deck or on a window, if they have condensation. And then you have to sort of convince them and really, really like, educate them on the moisture in the house, which is that is usually, I mean, that's what's causing the condensation, right? Like whether it's leaking through the roof and how do we stop that, or attaching to the window, the moisture in the house is the big issue. We'll put in brand new, whatever, Marvin windows, and then, that winter someone has condensation issues and they think the window is bad. And then you just have to educate them. I mean, that's the best we can do. There's no reason that they should know, those specific things, but it is something that happens that, it seems like we're kind of trying to put the wool over their eyes sometimes. Right. But I would say, like, 9 out of 10 times when I get a call with any type of condensation, and oftentimes it is on the roof decking, I'd say 9 times out of 10, they have some type of extra humidity in the house, whether it's a humidifier in the baby's room, could be they shower too much or whatever it is, but there's usually a reason right away, and it's based on water.
I
That's
totally
where it all
agree
starts.
with you. Yes. Yeah,
go ahead. So Ruben, I have 2 videos, and these are actually for ice dam removal. I don't know how much you know about ice dam removal.
Yeah, he's like, Chris, you want to explain, like,
Sure.
Is that?
Sure. So basically, I mean, what he's explaining, is he's trying to explain how the water creeps up, so he's pointing at these shingles, he's saying that water can creep up, this far. Once it does and melts, it can get behind the ice and water shield, get in your house. So he's kind of making that, kind of describing that. But what his method of getting rid of the ice dam is to use that rusty old hammer.
Yeah.
And he posted it on YouTube because he got lucky and he didn't break anything. At least he didn't videotape breaking anything.
Yeah.
But, and to be honest, Ruben, this is how I used to do it with my dad. When I was, growing up and we didn't have a steamer, we didn't even know they existed. There was no other way. So, I see this video and I think it's certainly dangerous, for the roof, for the shingle. But I would also say, if you have no other option, if there's no one with a steamer and you have water going into your walls, as a last ditch option, it does work. And this guy does it. He does his whole eave all the way around there. He takes off that whole ice dam, which, to be honest, it's not even that big.
So
It's a really small ice dam.
Right.
Oh, that's a small one?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, God. Well, my duplex, like that thing I'd have to chuck those pucks up there and stuff, which never did anything. I don't even know what you're supposed to do hardly. But Ruben, when you inspect a home for that kind of stuff, do you actually do you look at the outside at all? Or it's just all the inside stuff, like you said, for the venting and whatever, from inside the attic?
Yeah, we look at the outside, definitely. I mean, we
up there around gutters, you do?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We walk every roof that we can safely walk. If we can't safely walk on a roof, we at least put our ladder up against the eaves and we look at the roof in a bunch of different places up close. And we're looking for hack marks from people using things like hammers or hatchets or awls or ice picks or whatever. We're looking for hack marks along the eaves that would indicate you had some hack, for lack of a better word, up there removing ice dams. We're looking for that stuff for sure.
Can I ask another question, Chris, just about kind of general, this is sort of a little bit off, but like what makes a different, like, okay, if I'm going to buy a property, have it inspected, why choose you versus a competitor? Or what are the differences, do you think? What do you think you guys do different?
You're asking me, or you're asking Ruben?
Ruben.
Oh, okay.
I've got I could give you a book of answers. We could spend an hour on this, but the long and short of it is the training that we have for our inspectors. We have the most rigid, most rigorous training program of any home inspection company that I've ever heard of. And we hire people who know what they're doing. We're not hiring, people who come in off the street and we put them through a 2-week course and teach them how to write a home inspection report. We're hiring contractors. We're hiring people who have spent their life doing this and they are passionate about this. So we hire some of the best possible people. We have some of the best tools available in the industry, and we are an education focused company. That's our whole focus, is teaching people about their houses. And not only that, I mean, a lot of this stuff, you just got to kind of take my word for it. But if you don't want to take my word for it, see what other people have to say about us. We're one of the most highly rated home inspection companies in the country. We are the most highly rated in Minnesota. We're the most highly rated in the Midwest. If you look at our Google reviews, nobody complains about us. I mean, it is 5-star reviews. And what people say over and over again is they charge a little bit more and they were well worth way more. This is what our clients all say about us.
I'm glad you said that, Ruben, because clearly you run a great company, and when you said that they just have to take your word for it, I think that goes with any business, but it goes with mine too, where like you just have to trust, right? They just have to trust you. So sometimes you can't spell out every reason why you are a great business. They just have to trust you and take it from there. And if they don't want to, they can trust someone else, but find out what happens.
I think the hardest thing to get across is, like, as a business owner myself, I know you, Chris, are a detail-oriented guy, right? Like you do jobs the right way, sort of, right? And it's like, how do you describe that to a client? Really, right. My standards are higher.
Right. I think when I have a customer who's really kind of, I guess, grilling on like why are you the better company, that my default is always, you just have to trust me. You just have to take my word for it, right, Ruben? Like and if you don't, that's fine. But at some point, that's all I can say is you just have to trust me. And we have good reviews too, not nearly as many as yours, but of course that's something, right? Like to prove that we're not a scammy company. Right. Like if you have that many Google reviews like Structure Tech does, like you are obviously a legitimate company. Right. And so that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Pretty tough to fake that.
Right.
Are there people who come in like fly by night operations in inspection? I would think that would be hard to do, or not.
Not so much fly by night, but there is a huge difference in the level of quality that you'll find from one home inspection company to the next, because you've got this other third party called the realtor, and you can have unethical realtors out there who will refer companies who aren't going to make waves, who aren't going to kill the deal. Sure. And they're not going to really let people know about the severity of some of the problems you have in houses. They just want to make sure that they keep getting referrals from agents. So everything is a small deal. They'll sugarcoat a lot of stuff.
Right.
So because of that, somebody can write a very soft report that doesn't really educate the public, and they still get a lot of business. They're still successful.
Right. That's unfortunate too, but
it is.
And Ruben, you grew up in construction, is that right? Like I read your dad did some construction, is that right?
My dad was a carpenter growing up. That's what I did. I was homeschooled until 5th grade, and I'd spend a lot of my days, instead of doing lessons, all right, go to work with Dad today. We're doing demo. We're shingling a roof. I learned all about it growing up.
I need to put my 8-year-old to work.
I feel the same way. I figure, how do I have my son? How do I have my daughter learning in my footsteps? I spend most of my time doing what we're doing right now, doing podcasts and stuff like that.
You're pretty good at it for sure. So I think that's a good use. So I did want to, sort of get back to ice dams. And I think we could talk about your company probably for like 2 hours, and I'm willing to come back and do that. But the reason is, kind of side note, like when I listen to your podcast and watch your videos, I admittedly think you guys know more than contractors, than people like me, because you see everything. Whereas, we have our specialties, right? Most of us, like, our specialty is exteriors. So, I obviously you're going to know how the whole house interacts with each other, right? And I only know siding, let's say, right? But you
Yeah.
know every last element of it, and that's impressive. I mean, to have you guys, go out there and do you guys ever do like investigations, like for projects, or yeah? Okay.
Tons of them. And I mean, right now, while we're talking about ice dams, that's probably one of the biggest single item investigations that we do, is getting to the root of ice dams or frost in the attic. We do a lot of those in inspections. We call them single item inspections.
Okay. So when you do that, when someone calls you and they say, "Hey, I have an ice dam or condensate or ice on the roof deck," are they quick to say, sort of like, "I think it was my roofer," or "I think it was my blank"?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And then you come out
Everybody.
and sort of do your investigation. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
Yes. Yes. Everybody's got an idea of what it was. And it's usually the last person who was in there,
Right.
the last man in syndrome or whatever that is.
Yeah.
They blame the last person who was there.
Right.
And we're there to give them the unbiased truth.
Right. That's good. That's an important role. As far as ice dams go, do you believe more ice in water shield would prevent leaking? Do you, or have you seen that where let's say a home has 3 or 4 layers, more than it really needs or more than code requires? Is that some type of protection from the ice dam damage?
We know that ice and water shield helps, but even manufacturers of those products don't claim that this is going to prevent leaks from ice dams. They call it a first layer of defense. And that's exactly what it is. It will definitely help, but it's not going to prevent leaks. I mean, every one of those nails is a penetration, and it's only as good as the mastic is sealing around that nail.
Right. Right. So let's say you're a homeowner. Right now, we have, 2 feet of snow on your roof, let's say. What is the best way now to prevent ice dams 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, or 2 months even? Is it, raking your roof, shoveling it, or is there more to it than that?
Raking. I'd say raking. I want to say not all houses need this. We're really focused on older housing stock, houses that don't have enough insulation and that have a bunch of air leaks. You can have it happen on newer homes too, but it's much more prevalent in older houses. And yeah, the best thing you could do is to get a roof rake, which you surely cannot purchase today because everybody is completely out of them if you go to big box retailers.
Right.
But if you can get one from your neighbor and they'll let you use theirs, you use a roof rake. It's this big thing on the end of a pole, and you reach up and you pull the snow off the edge of your roof. And if you can get your shingles exposed for about 4 feet up or so, usually that's enough, because that's where ice dams form. And you get it so that the shingles are exposed to the sun. The sun will typically keep that area warm enough to prevent ice from actually forming. Usually that's enough to prevent ice dams. Now, under some really crazy extreme conditions, even that's not enough. But for almost every winter that we see, that'll be sufficient.
Sure. It's something, right? It's a step in the right direction. It takes 20 minutes to walk around if you have a roof rake.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
by the way,
say,
admittedly, I'm hoarding roof rakes. I have like 6 of them.
Mm.
And the reason is, I think it was, 3-4 years ago, we had a big ice dam season, if you will, and I couldn't find one. So come summertime, they started to show up again. I'm like, I'm buying these. I can't go without them anymore. So I probably shouldn't say that, but if someone needs one, you come to my place and
he'll sell it to you for
$300.
$300.
I'll sell it to you for $1,000. So we did a little story. We did a commercial job 2 years ago, massive roof. And it was like a 412 pitch, and they had ice and water the whole thing, top to bottom, all the way to the top. And it was a government job. So for some reason, government projects do not require permits, which this is when I found that out. Did you know that, Ruben? Like if
I
you
didn't
do
know that.
something at the VA, let's say, you don't have to do a permit. You don't have to actually pull a permit. So the person who built this project really designed it poorly, and no one caught it because no one was there to inspect it. But yeah, they did ice and water all around on the entire roof deck, and they had roof leaking during a really bad ice dam year. And so we went up there with our steamer. This is when we first got our steamer. We cleared everything out. We're pretty confident and happy. And then, a few days later, they still had leaking. And of course, and we found out, I'm sure Ruben knows, there was condensation on a pipe that should not have been in the attic in the first place, right? Because it was a California architect who designed the building. But,
oh boy.
But that was insanely puzzling because we knew that it had ice and water everywhere. We knew it, because we had torn off a lot of it. And so it was like, where's this water coming from? Sure enough, condensation, from a pipe. So that's usually my first place to go is if there's water, there's condensation. But of course, this season that might be different. There might be ice dam water.
Yeah. Very possible.
For sure. So, well, yeah, I mean, I do appreciate your time. Are we pretty good here on, see, 138?
Yeah, we got him for about 30 minutes. If he's got a quick question about his business, I got one that I'm curious about.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Very
do you have a few more minutes there, Ruben?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's your favorite kind of inspection thing that you've caught that you don't think other people would catch? Is there any anything that stands out like that to you, or even something you look for that maybe other people don't as much?
Yeah, the thing that we are super diligent about is finding water intrusion on exterior walls, especially on vinyl siding. And we've got all kinds of tricks up our sleeve to figure that out. And a lot of people get the idea that, vinyl siding, that's going to perform really well. And it does, but water still gets behind it. Just like water will get behind stucco and cause rotting, you can get a lot of leaking behind vinyl, and there's never any evidence of it. The wall is going to look perfect. Even if everything is a rotted mess and there's nothing behind that vinyl, it always looks perfect from the outside. And when we can go up to a wall and we can just pull back a little section of that vinyl and we can show to our client that there is nothing left behind it because it's so rotted, and they're in amazement. Like, how did you know? How did you know to pull the siding back here? That's one of my favorite things to be able to do is to find those. I mean, I always hate finding this stuff. It's always bad news, but much better for us to find it when someone's in the purchasing process than for someone to purchase a house and then find out about it later.
Is that usually, would you say, is that a kick out flashing? Usually kick out flashing is, or lack thereof, is the first place
a huge
you
one.
Look. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
flashing around windows, lack of kick out flashing. Absolutely.
Right. Which you can see from you can actually see from ground level, right? Like there's flashing there, there's not. Yeah. But yeah, I think we can let you go. I really do appreciate it, Ruben. Again, I'd love to have you on again, and I feel like we could talk forever about your industry and your company, because I find it kind of fascinating.
I didn't realize how interesting thinking of his job can be. For sure.
Yeah, and when I listen to your podcast, Ruben, I do think like, wow, almost every one of your guys has to know as much or more than a contractor. You kind of have to, right? Like there's so many things to know.
It's a ton. It's a lot of trades to know a lot about.
But that's amazing. I mean, I am a general contractor. I have a contractor's license, but there's certainly times where I get stumped and go like, I don't know plumbing or whatever that trade is. So I think you guys are in this like really cool situation where you can be just all around experts on structures, on homes. So, anyway, yeah, once again, appreciate you coming on, Ruben.
And then we should shout out his company one last time. I got his website up here. So we got Structure Tech. And then Ruben, do you guys, just as far as services go, I know you do home inspections, but you can also, if someone's buying a house, you can have them come out and look at one particular thing. Is that possible? Or like what's your range of products, I guess?
It's pretty unusual for a buyer to have us do a single item inspection. Usually if someone's buying a house, they hire us to do the full home inspection.
Sure.
And a lot of the time they'll add on a bunch of extra services. Like we also do a sewer inspection, a radon test, might want mold testing, might want a chimney inspection where we run a camera down the chimney. All of these specialized inspections, we do all of those things for real estate transactions. And then for current homeowners, that's where we get into the more single item inspections, troubleshooting inspections to get over a pain point.
All right. Thanks, Ruben.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So the damage that can be caused by ice dams is rather extensive. You can have wall damage.